Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about fear. I wanted to dive right into that topic, particularly because it's become of some relevance given the scare that we're going through with the coronavirus, how that's probably on everybody's minds and conversations. I mean, certainly has provided lots of ammunition for meme creators and so on. So I wanted to talk about how fear influences the way that we behave. It influences the way that we behave towards one another, how we think, how we interact, and certainly influences our decision making process. So without further ado, let's get on that subject. Fear has become a, a commodity in today's society. We trade fear as if it were a stock in the New York exchange. Media outlets, for example, I mean, they make money by selling you a product, and that product is actually, fear. Okay, it's fear mongering, and the reason why they sell you that product is because it's an addictive product because it targets particular regions in the brain that make the consumption an addiction. People are going to come back for more. People love, watching headlines of catastrophic events and so on. It just happens to be that the current one is the coronavirus, but it's not the first one, or it certainly will not be the last one. And I think that betrays a problem um, that that betrays a problem that is it's at the root of modern society, and that is the fact that fear responses have substituted rational thinking. We have become reactionary, and that actually permeates all the different strata of human interaction, even at the personal level. We're no longer able to listen to another person, but we actually rather, someone who may be of a different political persuasion than we are, someone who may be of a different religious affiliation than we are, and that is translated into, fear responses, which may be aggression, alienation, and so on. I mean, the list goes on and on. Fear is a primary emotion, and it serves a survival, an important survival function. The autonomic nervous system walks onto limbs, as it were, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic branches, and each of them have a unique task in regulating internal and automatic neurophysiological responses or states. The parasympathetic branch is a sort of of brake for the system. Okay, it down regulates the system to bring it to rest. Okay, so much like the brakes in a car. The sympathetic regulates the flight or flight responses. If you see a dog running at you, foaming at the mouth, and barking and so on, you don't have time to really to think what your next step will be. You simply, go on automatic pilot, and your heart rate will increase, your respiration will increase, and your blood will be, you know, uh, um, filled with adrenaline, and you start running to try to escape the dog. Or you might just, find some inner courage and go at the dog and try to, fight him off or something like that. They are important neurotransmitters associated with the sympathetic branch, including norepinephrine and epinephrine, uh, which are, it should be familiar to some. This is the same kind of neurotransmitters that are um, used, when someone has an allergic reaction, for example, in an EpiPen. Okay, and why is it that we put that in EpiPens? Well, because during an allergic reaction, adrenaline causes the airways to expand, the heart rate to increase, and that's how you save your life. Uh, but these neurotransmitters also have a powerful effect in inhibiting a pain sensation during times of stress, which in turn over time habituates the person to higher levels of stress, and this becomes a vicious cycle out of which is very difficult to break free from. The sympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system serves also an important survival function, as we have mentioned. However, its overuse has detrimental effects at the psychological and physiological uh, levels by causing what's called upregulation. Um, this, of course, affects us at the psychological level by impacting our perceptions and our responses to external cues. An excited sympathetic system is threat oriented. Okay, and at the psychological level, this implies that attention will discriminate in favor of potential dangerous situations, whether real or imagined. Um, and of course, the consequence of an overused sympathetic response patterns are expressed in anxious and depressive disorders, as the literature seems to suggest. An equal impact is felt at the physiological level, where the activation of the fight flight responses, puts an undue stress on cardiovascular systems, thus increasing the risk of heart disease and other associated diseases. Now, since these responses are automatic, it is very likely that you're not even aware that you're experiencing them, particularly if you live, as we do, in a fear saturated culture. From the fear responses elicited by the stress of having to deal with traffic in your morning commute, to the fear responses elicited by problems in your relationships, um, the fear responses um, to the fear that we consume via different media venues. It is not surprising that neuropsychiatric disorders are the leading cause of disability in the United States. We're just overexposed to stress causing situations. And then those mechanisms, which were meant to serve a survival function, which are meant to be used um, sporadically, because of their overuse, because we're using them on a daily basis, they're having a negative impact on our on health. You know, Overexposure to fear can and does affect your health. This is a known fact. Um, so, I mean, the good news is that you can do something about it. Of course, if you're suffering from depression or anxiety, I would recommend that you seek psychotherapy, which is a known evidence-based treatment for these disorders. Uh, but you can also do things in your daily routine to change or minimize your exposure to fear. Okay. And after all, you owe it to yourself. Your health is probably one of your greatest investments. Um, I wrote down a set of recommendations that you can follow to help you minimize your exposure to fear, particularly in today's society, where that exposure to fear, as we have mentioned before, has just become the norm. One of these is, it says, cut your TV time. Okay, we're all live in a society that's addicted to the television. Everybody's watching some Netflix um, series, or they're watching the news. Um, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, or whatever the case may be. Uh, Reduce the hours you spend in front of your television or tablet, particularly watching news. Okay, the less exposed you are to, or the fewer hours you spend in front of a screen, scaring you, the less you're going to be using your autonomic responses, or the less that they will be activated. Um, Another suggestion is to read a book. You know, You probably don't do a lot of reading. It's very hard in our modern, society to get some reading time. We're all very busy. We have work, and what little spare time we have, we may spend it with the family, or But try to find some time, some niche, in some niche in your time to read. Okay. Reading books not only stimulate your imagination, but they do have, because they stimulate your imagination, they have an important impact at the neuropsychological level. The brain loves a good story, okay, and stories allow our brains to have new experiences and exercise problem solving skills by living vicariously through the lives of the characters in a book, um, and all this in the comfort of your own home, or the beach or whatever. Uh, the brain doesn't really know the difference between doing something and thinking that you're doing something. I think that's a very important point to stress. And of course, it goes without saying that the bulk of your reading should not consist in news stories. Okay, stay away from the headlines. Another recommendation is to exercise. The Romans had a saying, "Mens sana in corpore sano," a healthy mind in a healthy body. Um, your brain is not just this thing, stuck in your skull. Your brain actually innervates, it's throughout you, it innervates your whole body. It's extended through your whole body. So working out your body, uh, you by extension work out your brain. Okay, recent research has actually revealed that physical exercise is the strongest protector against Alzheimer's. Okay, it also engages the autonomic nervous systems, and it helps to regulate it. So that's very important. Another recommendation, and probably one that might surprise you, but it's to talk to people that you disagree with. And I said talk, not yell. Oftentimes, when we talk to someone that we don't necessarily agree with, it becomes a shouting match. Okay. Um, we all love to talk to people who share our same, worldviews and our points of view. We love sharing ideas with those um, who agree with us, while engaging with those who disagree with us can make us irritable and uncomfortable. However, the more you practice this, the less irritated you feel by talking to others with different worldviews. The more you practice, um, this behavior, namely talking to people who you may not necessarily agree with and trying to understand their worldview, the less the amygdala becomes engaged. The amygdala, which is a little tiny, about the size of your thumb, gland at the base of your brain, mediates the fear responses, the responses of the autonomic nervous system. And when the amygdala becomes engaged, it kind of, it shuts down higher cortical functions, like thinking, and so on. So what we want to do is we want to, by engaging in the practice of talking and discussing, having discussions with people that we don't agree with, and or that we may not even like, we are learning to regulate amygdala mediated responses, and engaging more the higher cortical functions, thinking, understanding, learning to listen to someone before we respond. Most of us are in the habit of responding before we have even understood, or we listen in order to respond, not in order to understand. So the more you engage in that practice, the better able you become at learning how to engage with the other, at a genuine human level. And by extension, the less irritated you become, the less irritable you are, the more uh, psychologically flexible, which is very important because it makes you resilient, uh, more resilient to trauma, and less susceptible to anxiety and depressive disorders. So it's a good practice, okay, to expose yourself to these kinds of situations, because you're kind of inoculating yourself. sort of like a vaccine with small doses, and your brain becomes more flexible, more tolerant. These are some of the recommendations that I had written down. I hope that were beneficial and useful to you. I hope you implement them in your routine. If you found them, if you found this video to be of help, or let me know by liking, hitting the like button, or sharing a comment, or sharing the video. If you have any comments, please write it down at the comment section below, as well as suggestions. If you have suggestions for future videos, or if you have questions about topics that you would like me to do a video on, feel free to leave a comment. Thank you for your time.